Right. All right, ladies. So this is officially a Farbrengen. There's no l'chaims, but we'll make l'chaims on our water and our tea, which is actually the real source of life. So l'chaim to everybody. I am very happy to be here with everyone tonight. Just wishing everybody here a good year and a gmar chasima tova. Before we even start, of course, we'll wish everyone when we end, but I feel like just that we come together in this time, we don't even want to start without wishing each other a good year and a good gewenst year. We should take that intention with us, of course, in all of our learning and farbrengen and speaking. And I know this is being streamed, so some people are watching it and they're not local. But I do want to encourage everybody who is here to participate, because the Farbrengen is not a lecture and it's not a shiur, and even though, maybe we'll have a little bit of all of that, but I really want this to connect to where we are right now. And every time Yidden gather together, it's meant to bring us more chizuk, strengthen us. And this process that we're in right now of tshuva is it's a intense process, and we can all use chizuk in it. So if something comes up for you, or something that you want to elaborate on, or you want me to elaborate on, or go into more detail in, so let's keep the conversation going. And no one gains by shyness. If we speak up, then we all benefit. So really feel comfortable to make this more Farbrengen, less a lecture. And if you ask something or say something and it's quiet and they don't hear it on camera, I'll just repeat it for all those who are watching and not able to make it in person tonight. Okay. So today is Zion. Today was Zion Tishrei. And the beauty of the Rebbe Chana's yard site being on Vav Tishrei is that it's smack in the middle of Aseret Yimei Tshuva, which gave us a lot of very beautiful Farbrengens during the Aseret Yimei Tshuva, that we're very, very lucky to have incredible Farbrengens from the Rebbe from this time, where, of course, the Rebbe speaks about, inyanim that are related to his mother, to the Rebbe Chana, but also, of course, to the time period that we're in, the Aseret Yimei Tshuva. And a little bit from the Rebbe's Sicha in Tafshin Mem on Vav Tishrei. So even though today's Zion, it was about the Aseret Yimei Tshuva, of course. And he was talking about how the Rambam writes that even though that every single day is a good day for tshuva and for tefillah, every single moment, every single instant, and every single day is a time for tshuva and for tefillah. This time of Aseret Yimei Tshuva is a time when it's more accessible, when it's closer to us, when the potency of the tefillah and the tshuva that we do is just so much more present. So that's what we're in right now. And the Rebbe also continued and spoke about the idea that the Aseret Yimei Tshuva is a very appropriate time to gather. So what we're doing here right now is perfect. Of course, the Rebbe spoke a lot about Hakel. The idea of Hakel, which we read about in last week's Parsha, the mitzvah of Hakel to gather after the year of Shemitah. And every time there was a Hakel year, that was like, this idea of gathering was over and over, it was spoken about. But really this idea that when Yidden gather, there's a very, very powerful energy that occurs. You know, one of the psukim that the Rebbe loved so much, V'amech kulam tzadikim, right? It's one of the 12 psukim. And really the idea that Knesset Yisrael, when we're gathered as a group, the collective of Klal Yisrael is a tzaddik. So, you know, this person has their struggle with this particular thing, this person has their thing with that particular thing, but when we come together as a collective, we are a tzaddik. The body of the Yidden as a collective is a tzaddik. So there's such an incredible thing that happens when Yidden gather, that we really tap into that inner tzaddik that's in all of us, and that we really need to access at this time as we're going into Yom Kippur, to really tap into that inner tzaddik that we know is there in each one of us, and which we experience much more when we are together in a group, especially when the purpose of gathering is one for Kedusha, and one where we speak words of Torah and Chassidus, then we know for sure that we're tapping in to our very deep inner tzaddikus that each one of us have.
Thank you for coming.
Exactly. For all of you that are coming, you know, we're making not just a minyan, we're making minyanim of women that are, and this, all of us in this generation are Nashim Tzidkaniyos. We know this, the Rebbe spoke about it very often, that this is the generation of Geula, and that every woman is really part of the front lines to get us there. So very important that we're gathered here. The Rebbe also spoke about this idea that Rosh Hashanah is a time that we bring in physical blessings, material blessings, that the seeds for all the bracha materially that are going to come into the world, in our lives personally and into the world in general, these come into the world on Rosh Hashanah. And Yom Kippur, Rebbe spoke about, is the idea of the ruchnius, the brachas that occur in ruchnius in our lives. And this week between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, because even though we call it Aseret Yemei Tshuva, which it is, including Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but there's actually 7 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I don't know who here else feels like it's 5 minutes between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but I promise you it was a week. I know we had a Shabbos in between also. So just to mess with our heads just a little bit, see if we're like, you know, keeping track. Did everyone see that thing that's going around with like what to wish? What's arrow? What do you wish today? Right. This month we really need it. But how beautiful that every single day of this month we have another bracha that we can wish each other. So just we can appreciate that also. But this idea that this 7 days in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is sort of the bridge between the Gashmias and the Ruchnias, all the brachas. And of course, we know the Rebbe Rashab used to say this. I think he's the originator of this statement. And of course, the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe, they elaborated on it a lot. But this idea that the Gashmias of a Yid is Ruchnias. So it's not actually, when we're talking about the Gashmias brachas, it's not separate from the Ruchnias. When Gashmias brachas come into the life of a Yid, it is Ruchnias. Not once we turn it into Ruchnias. It is already Ruchnias. So when we ask for all the Gashmias, we are actually asking for our Ruchnias. We can be the person we need to be in this world. Our neshamas can shine. Our purpose can shine in this world when we have what we need, the Gashmias, and that's why they are really, one is intertwined with the other, and they're not a separate thing. So I think everybody is aware, right, that we're in the Aseret Yemei Tshuva, right, and that we're in this process of Tshuva. You might have heard about it a little bit, been talking about it a little bit. Maybe you made it to Shul for a minute here and there. And it's like, it feels to us really like it starts in Elul, right? Rosh Chodesh Elul. There's a beautiful there's a beautiful Hayom Yom about the winds of Elul that you feel, and we all know what that feeling, Rosh Chodesh Elul, suddenly like at night it gets a little chilly, and suddenly like, oh wait, Elul, and it's like, wait, I'm not ready, Elul's coming, and suddenly we start thinking about Shuvah, we start thinking about realignment, we start thinking about preparing for Rosh Hashanah, for Yom Kippur, for the Yom Adin, for these Aseres Yemei Shuvah. But the truth is, if you zoom out a little bit, this process actually begins a lot earlier than Rosh Chodesh Elul. So Rosh Chodesh Elul, we're already deep in the process of Tshuva. And Tshuva, I would venture to say, begins, I mean, it's really a year-long cycle, because you could say it begins, I could say it begins Rosh Chodesh Nissan. It begins with Pesach. But it really begins earlier because Adar, we're preparing for Nissan. And in the winter months, we're preparing ourselves for Adar. And it's really every month of the year is bringing us closer and closer to this idea. But there is something very essential that happens in Nissan, in the process of Yetzias Mitzrayim, that actually brings us to this place that we are right now, to these days. Now, I'm not advocating that anyone starts cleaning for Pesach. Please don't get me wrong. I am not that person. Just make it through Yom Kippur and Sukkot, and you all get medals. We all get medals. Whatever stage of life we're in, we get medals by the end of Tishrei, because it is intense work. And however we are doing that work and whatever stage of life we're in, the work is powerful, and we have to show up for it. And so everyone gets a pat on the back when we finish this month. And in Mirz Hashem, the pat on the back is so internal. It's so, we're in such a good place from all this work that you don't need an external pat on the back. But really it does begin. It begins with the process of Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's interesting, we say this throughout davening, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, but if you think about it, we say, Yom Trua, Mikra Kodesh. You want to finish the Zecher L'Tzias Mitzrayim. Yom Trua, right? Rosh Hashanah, these days, and Zecher L'Tzias Mitzrayim. What's the connection? What's the connection? Why are we bringing up Yetzias Mitzrayim when we're talking about Tshuva? We're talking about Trua, we're talking about awakening, and here we are keeping on going back to Yetzias Mitzrayim and reminding ourselves that there's this connection. There is this deep connection between Yetzias Mitzrayim and where we are right now in this process of Tshuva.
I would think of a connection to Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
Just due to the fact that because of Yetzias Mitzrayim, then we're in the Midbar, then Chet HaEgel, then v'chulu, and then we led to Yom Kippur. To Rosh Hashanah, Yom Teruah, that was.
So right. So what's that? Right. So the narrative, we can see the story, how it follows, right? But the work of Tshuva, what's the connection to Yetzias Mitzrayim? The work of Tshuva.
I remember that and like the cycle of love that talks about when you were talking about that, the Tshuva concept.
That's beautiful. Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of love in Yetzias Mitzrayim, and that's very much a part of it. It's very much a part of it that we come to Tshuva from a place of love, and that Tshuva is a very deep expression of love. But if you think about it, there's this idea, Chazal tell us that every time in the Torah that it says ve'ata, and now, ata with an ayin, and now, it is speaking about Tshuva and the idea of transformation. So the word ve'ata calls us to Tshuva. What do we do when we leave Mitzrayim? The word Mitzrayim, we always say is Mitzrayim, right? It's constrictions, it's limitations, it's leaving the past and being able to move forward, right? It's coming out of that stuckness, coming out of that thing that traps us, and being able to move forward into the future. So really, I mean, what are we talking about when we talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim and what's happening there? It's really the process of freedom, right? We talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim, and that is the beginning of who we become as a people, as Klal Yisrael. Essential to who we are is this concept of freedom. And I feel like it's always also like a very confusing topic. Pesach time also, when we talk about freedom, it's like, you know, we're not slaves. We haven't been slaves in many, many years. And we talk about freedom and it feels a little bit like an abstract concept to us. Like what are we actually celebrating, and what does freedom actually mean? And how is this applying to us? You know, there's the beautiful words that the Frierdiker Rebbe said as he was boarding the train to Kostroma, to go into captivity, into exile, to Golus. And he spoke to his Chassidim who were so brokenhearted, seeing their Rebbe being taken away from them and being trapped. And now he's essentially imprisoned in exile. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said then these very powerful words, that only the guf of a yid can ever go into captivity, but the neshama, the nefesh, the neshama of a yid is never, ever in captivity, is always free. The fact of Yetzias Mitzrayim is the fact of existential freedom that each one of us have, that is always present. Nice words, I mean, right? But what are we actually talking about?
Especially because it's usually in Nissan that we're talking about this, and you're
right.
free to
And here I am talking about freedom. I'm going there, and everybody's like, wait. Can we just stick to tshuva here? And I promise you we're going to get there. I promise you we're going to get there. Because it's a process. We spoke about tshuva is a process. And sometimes we find it very, very hard. In this month, in these particular days, to access tshuva, to access that particular mode of being. And sometimes if we zoom out and we understand where the process begins and where it comes from, and the whole equation that gets us to this place, we can actually reach the place we want to get to. So you'll come with me on this journey. I promise we're going to get to tshuva, but we start with freedom. In the last few parshias, we've been, we're actually in Hazinu this week, so we're in the second to last. We're finishing the Torah. Torah never ends. Finishing just so we can cycle and begin again. But Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking to the Yidden and really trying. It's like so poignant. And I think this year, reading the Parshios of Devarim, I'm especially struck by the poignancy of like how Moshe Rabbeinu is trying so hard to give this over to us in a way that's going to stick when he's not around. He knew how hard it was, even when he was around, for us to stick with Divrei Elokim Chaim, like we were so close to. And he wanted so much to be able to give this over. And just such incredible, important themes that are in Devarim. Well, one of them that keeps coming up multiple times in Devarim is this idea of Uvacharta b'chaim, that you should choose life. And Moshe Rabbeinu says it in different ways. Eibishter says it in different ways throughout Devarim. One time it's only, I've placed before you bracha and klala. I've placed before you the blessings and the curses. Choose and sometimes it's I place before you. It's a bracha, it's a klala, it's a chayim, it's a maves. Ubacharta b'chayim. And then he tells us, choose life. So here, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling us an essential fact of who we are now as Yidden, something essential that changed after Yetzias Mitzrayim, and that is that we have free choice, that we're free now. And what is real freedom? What does freedom actually mean? Freedom means you have the freedom to choose. And then he says, what does Moshe Rabbeinu say? Ubacharta b'chayim. So I'm placing before you this choice. You have a choice. There's life. There's chas v'shalom, the opposite. There's bracha. There's chas v'shalom, the opposite. Choose life. So he's telling us we have free choice, but then he's actually telling us what to choose. Which doesn't sound very free, actually. And I heard a beautiful explanation this year that ubacharta b'chayim is not choose life, it's and you will choose life. Because if you are actually making a real choice, the choice will always be life. We go through life, we think we're making choices. Very often, we think we're actually making a choice, but in truth, we're actually reacting and responding to a situation at hand based on our previous experiences, our previous, whatever we've told ourselves in the past, whatever we believe, our prejudices, our belief systems, our own, our fears, our survival mechanisms. There's so much that is involved in decision making, and very rarely are we actually making a real choice. To make a real choice is true freedom, and it requires being in a very deep state of presence. If we're connected to what happened in the past, we're not really making a choice in the moment, right? We're responding in a way that lines up with what we've experienced in the past or what we're scared of and what we don't want to repeat or what we don't, and it's literally a reaction. In order to make a choice at any point in our lives, we have to be in a state of da'as. So we speak about this, and I know this is a group that learns Chassidus, and we throw around these terms a lot, right? This term of das is something that I'm sure you're all familiar with. Everyone's heard the term das. Anybody familiar with what das is? How would you describe das?
Connection.
What's that?
Connection.
Internalizing. What's that? Focus. These are actually all truths. To be in a state of das is just in a purely biological way of saying it. It's when your prefrontal cortex comes online. So if anybody's familiar a little bit with the different parts of the brain, right? You have like the amygdala, which is like the fear. We have different parts of the brain that are trained for different aspects of our survival. And then we have the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is also called the executive mind. And that actually, we're told, doesn't fully develop until you're in your 20s. So it's very interesting. So das, everyone here is in a state of das, Mitzvah Hashem. I think we're all of age. They keep pushing it up. Maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe it's taking us longer and longer to get to a place of das. But in truth, it could take a lifetime, really, to get to a real place of das. And das is really when we're in a state of our nervous system being completely relaxed and present, not in a state of fear, not in a state of survival, but really in a state of pure presence and awareness. You know, it's amazing that we talk about Moshe Rabbeinu is Das, and he represents Das, and he's the one who brings us to Matan Torah. He's the one who takes us out of a state of slavery into a state of freedom and gives us the Torah, and he is the one that embodies Das. And it's very important and powerful that Moshe Rabbeinu is Das, because that's how we come into a state of freedom. To be in a state of freedom, we have to be in a state of Das, which means our fully present mind is online. We are here. We're not tied to fears of what happened in the past. We're not tied to anxiety about what's going to happen in the future. But we are right here, right now. And in that space, we're actually completely free to make a choice. And when we're in that space and we make a choice, the choice is always going to be for life. We're always going to choose life and hope and connection and love from that place of being fully present and awareness online. By the way, I don't know if you've ever heard this idea, but that the tefillin shel Rosh, which is supposed to bring das, awareness, actually sits right here on the prefrontal cortex. And it's fascinating because there is this idea in like Chinese acupuncture and acupressure and that thing that when you put pressure on this part of the mind, it actually awakens das. It actually awakens your prefrontal cortex. It awakens your ability to be in a state of mindfulness and consciousness and presence. So that's like an incredible idea to think that every day to put the tefillin shel Rosh is to engage that part of the mind and to bring yourself into a state of presence. You know, we begin Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in a very strange way. Think about it, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, like the holiest days of the whole year. Yom Kippur is literally like the peak experience of the year. We're malachim. We show up as malachim. We're like, let go of everything. We come into shul, and what is the first tefillah that we say? Right. What is kol nidre? Right. We're annulling our vows. You know, there's a beautiful tune to it, and it feels very like, it feels like when we hear it, like we get the chills. We feel. But do you ever look at the machzor or what the words are? We're coming into the holiest day of the year, and how do we begin? By saying that all the vows that I made, they're annulled, they don't count. It's like we're basically going before a bezdin, right? That's what we're doing, right? Al das hamakam. We're coming before bezdin. That's why we do it in shul. By the way, originally there's fascinating history to Kol Nidre, and they say it goes back to the Maranos or the Conversos, that they used to only come to shul on Yom Kippur, and they would have to annul their vows because they were living as Goyim. But of course, there's a deeper Ruchnius reason that we begin Yom Kippur with Kol Nidre. We're annulling our vows. We're letting go of those things that we said that tied us to an old reality before we can move forward. Because, you know, a vow is a very powerful thing. What is a vow? A vow is something that we speak that becomes reality, right? And we know that creation happens through dibur, and we are co-creators in this world, and we are the medaber. That's how we are in the divine image, that we are the ones who speak, and we create through our speech. When we say things, they become reality. When we believe things about ourselves or about someone and we speak them, that becomes a vow that binds them to that reality. if we want to move fully into a space of tshuva, fully back into our place of authenticity and purity, we first have to let go of these vows. And we can really think about this. It sounds like very lofty ideas, but in our own lives, like if we think about how do we switch into a mode of tshuva, it's very, we use very like esoteric words and words that sound like they're from another, like they belong in a sefer, but it's very human. The process of tshuva is very, very, very human, and it's made for us humans because we are the ones who need tshuva. And it's not a glitch in the system, it's part of the system. Tshuva is built into the system because we are humans and we're meant to be living as humans. But if you think about it, think about it just in terms of a very human relationship. I think a relationship that everybody can relate to in some way probably is a parent-child relationship. Maybe our own relationship with our parents. And there's patterns that set in, right? There's patterns that have been set in over time. Disappointments, ways in which we were failed in some way, ways in which the person who was supposed to show up for us maybe didn't show up for us in the way we needed them to show up for us. Maybe words that were said that hurt, that stuck with us. And these things become the neder. These things become the vows that establish the way the relationship is. And then maybe like we have an encounter. So let's say, for example, you're now an adult and your mother comes to visit you for Yom Tif, and she comes into the kitchen and you're peeling potatoes. And this is probably already the 10th batch of potatoes you're peeling. You don't have that much patience anymore. And she says to you, why are you peeling the potatoes this way? There's such a better way to peel potatoes. Why do you peel potatoes like this? You should peel potatoes like this. You're peeling the potatoes wrong. Okay. So if we're living in a place of our past, if we're connected to all the previous hurts, then all the previous times that we weren't trusted or we weren't believed in, then this becomes a big deal. And our response to that comment is going to be a reaction, right? It's going to be a reaction. Maybe we'll stay in a state of kavod, but there's going to be a reaction. Maybe it's only going to be internal. I'll be like, I'm peeling the potatoes, let me peel the potatoes, But what, let's just have a theory here. What if we're actually able to be completely present in the moment? Not tied to what was in the past. No anxiety about what's going to be, but right now, just right now, I'm here. And someone just suggested a different way to peel a potato. And now we actually can make a choice how we respond. Because there's nothing tied to that. We're not stuck. We've been able to move forward. We're able to be completely present right now with what is. And what is right now is simply a suggestion that maybe there's a better way to peel a potato. And from that place, we can make a decision, a real choice. Do I want to change the way I peel potatoes? No, I've been peeling potatoes like this for 20 years. And I'm very good at it, and I peel them very quickly, and I'm getting through 100 pounds of potatoes saying I'm fine, but thank you for the suggestion. But I'm going to stick with my way. Or, maybe I'll try something new, and I'll try to peel a potato differently. Either way, it's a choice. Our response in this moment is actually a choice. And when we choose in that moment, our response is going to be It's going to be a response that comes from a place of love, of connection, of life. Because when we're present, that's what we're tapping into. Always, that's what we're tapping into. Of course, sometimes a comment is less innocuous and maybe more obviously difficult, whether or not it's tied. We still have a choice. We still always have a choice in every single moment to choose connection, to choose love, and essentially, b'charta b'chaim, to choose life and hope and possibility in this moment.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Is that it? I feel like a lot of our modern day world and modern day psychology is based on triggers.
Mm-hmm.
Whether how we react to triggers or avoiding the possibility of triggers.
Right.
And I think this is kind of like the trump card, for lack of a better word, of let's not let the trigger be a trigger.
That's right.
You can make a choice.
You choose if it's a trigger. Absolutely. How connected you are to that past story is going to determine how triggering that statement or that thing that happens actually is. And you know, the past never really exists. Once something happens, it doesn't actually exist. And trauma is only the reliving of that in the present moment, so that you're creating it over and over and over again. But once something happens and it's in the past, it has to be dealt with so that we can move forward. And when we say that we're doing Hataras Nedarim, this is coming after a long process. It doesn't happen on its own. There is a long process that has to happen. It begins from a place of freedom and doesn't even begin there. And we'll talk about the real equation that's happening here. But we say Zachreinu l'chaim melechafetz b'chaim v'chasvenu b'sefer hachaim. Zachreinu l'chaim. We're not asking necessarily the Eibusher should remember us. We're really saying that we should remember to stay connected to life. That we should remember to stay in a state of life, because that is the Eibusher's desire. The Eibusher desires life. The Eibusher is the creator of life, the giver of life, and the Eibusher always wants life. Melech chafetz b'chaim. The Eibusher loves, desires life. So choose it. So choose to live in that state of connection. Choose to live in that place of life, and remember that that is the place you want to live in. Remember yourself for life. We're never stuck. I told this story actually, I think probably when I was speaking at Erev Pesach, if I had to guess, because it is about this, and I know I'm really sorry, everyone. I don't want to, speaking about triggers, if Pesach triggers anyone. Peeling potatoes, really, I don't know. I'm really in a interesting time warp here right now. Forget that I don't know if it's Shabbos or Yom Tov or what day we're in. I think it's Pesach right now. But there's a great story that happened to a group of women who went to a Neshei Chabad convention years ago. And they were flying back Erev Shabbos, and there was some storm, and they were in the airport, and the flight was grounded, and they were desperate to get home for Shabbos. They left little kids at home, and they were sitting in the airport, and they had one of the women, I think it was Mrs. Swerdlove, called the maskiras to ask for a bracha, and she told Rabbi Chadakov that they were stuck in the airport. And she said, we're stuck in the airport. Please ask the Rebbe a bracha that we should be able to come home for Shabbos. And she heard it. Chadakov turned to the Rebbe and said, the women are stuck in the airport. And the Rebbe said, stuck? And he starts explaining, stuck. No, the Rebbe understands English very well. The Rebbe doesn't understand the word stuck. And the Rebbe said, a Yid is never stuck. And at that moment, the entire situation became reframed. And they understood that if they were in this airport, whatever is going to happen, whether or not they make it home for Shabbos, whatever, they need to be here right now. There's a purpose to them being in this situation, as difficult and challenging and scary as it felt to them in this moment. They were there for a purpose. Of course, this is a group of Lubavitch women, so they whip out their neshek kits and they start walking around the airport and get a bunch of ladies to light Shabbos candles. And Baruch Hashem, they make it on the airplane and they get home for Shabbos. But what a powerful reframing of a situation. If you're a Yid, you're never stuck. You're never trapped. You're never enslaved. You are always, always free, no matter how difficult or challenging a situation is. If we understand that we're put in that situation for a purpose, we can make an actual choice in that moment how we're going to respond. Viktor Frankl, anyone's ever heard of Viktor Frankl? He wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He said this, he coined this phrase, ostensibly, allegedly, this is his phrase, that he writes, between stimulus and response, there is space. In that space is our power to choose our response. It's very, just as an aside, Viktor Frankl has fascinating connections with the Rebbe. I don't know if anyone's aware. But there was an actress who visited the Rebbe once and told the Rebbe that she was going to be visiting Austria. And the Rebbe told her, if you go to Austria, I want you to take this letter to Mr. Frankl. And he sent her with a letter, and she went to Viktor Frankl's home and she had a conversation with him. And he told her then that actually all the years, he came up with his concept in psychology, which was, what's that? Logotherapy, right? Which was the idea that the primal survival mechanism is really a search for freedom, that the thing that determines if a person really survives is if they are able to find a purpose, a deeper, higher purpose for living. And this came to him in the camps when he was really noticing who was surviving and who wasn't, and what was the mechanism of survival. But when he was writing this book, he was getting a lot of flack from other professionals in his field who thought that this was hokey and this wasn't based on real science, and that this was, this was not, this was, fake pseudoscience. And he said to this actress who brought him the letter from the Rebbe that all the years that everyone told him not to write the book and told him that this wasn't, and discouraged, he said, the only one who encouraged him throughout was the Rebbe. And the Rebbe continuously encouraged him to write this book and to pursue this line of thinking. And it's very, very fascinating. I mean, there's so many connections. The Rebbe told the Shliach when he went out there to visit Mr. Frankl earlier than this, much earlier, and bring him matzah. And he used to give Erev Rosh Hashanah check, tzedakah, to the Shliach. He was not married to a Jew. And he didn't live in any way, connected to his Yiddishkeit, but he always stayed connected because of the Rebbe. And his work really has transcended time. And so the Rebbe really tapped into that. There's actually very interesting, connected to this idea as well, and ends up being connected to Viktor Frankl, which is fascinating. When you just see the sphere of influence that the Rebbe had in this world, it's actually, it's beyond belief. So there's a book that I was reading lately that just recently came out that was written by, and you probably have to be closer to my age maybe to know this story, but anyone ever heard of the story with Amanda Knox? There's this college girl who was a year overseas in Italy, and there was a terrible tragedy. Her roommate was killed, and she was accused of the murder. And she was put away in prison for, I think it was like 26 or 27 years. She was falsely accused. And I actually read her memoir years ago. She wrote the memoir, and I remember then it was in the news. It was like everyone was talking about it. It was a crazy how they portrayed her and created this whole false narrative. And she got out of prison after 4 years, still struggled with the legal system for 18 years till she was really exonerated. But she recently wrote a new book and she called it Free. And she speaks about the idea that when she came out of prison, she was still not free. And just the fact of being released from captivity did not actually make her free, but that came much later. And she said the first moment that she felt free, she went back to that place and she met with her prosecutor, the one who falsely accused her and created this whole narrative and wanted to put her away for life. And she met with him, she connected with him, and she forgave him. She found deep compassion in herself for this person, this flawed person. And she forgave him. And she said at that moment, that was the first moment that she actually felt free. Do you understand how it's all coming together? And by the way, here's the crazy thing. What is the book that Amanda Knox found in prison that got her through? Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. So crazy. You know, you think about, like the Rebbe encouraging this person in Austria to pursue this and write this book. And one day, who knows, right? Who this reaches and how this, but this woman wrote this powerful thing on freedom, and really this idea that the minute she was able to make a real choice, to choose to forgive, not because she had to, but because she decided to choose it, that was when she felt fully and completely free. Right. They should say sorry. And she writes that he never fully said sorry, and this was a very difficult thing. Yes, a person should say sorry, but that's on them.
And then, like, what if they're just, like, putting it on you, like, oh, you did something wrong? Like, what if you do that? Like, oh, like, you know, like, well, I'm not gonna admit to doing something you do.
Right.
For them to, like, so,
I think you're literally describing this situation that this woman was in, right? He accused her. He never fully admitted that he believed the truth, that she didn't commit this crime. So she's facing him. He still thinks in some part of him that she might have committed this crime. She knows she's innocent. And yet she can forgive him because she understands that he is a flawed person and that his choices and his actions came from that place. Now, that doesn't mean that she accepts that what he did was right or was good or was fair or true or any of those things. She could still consider it completely evil what he did. Can you what? You say a little louder.
I don't need to see this person again. I don't care about that.
Absolutely, you don't have to face a person, but you need to find forgiveness in your heart.
It's like, let's say, like, you know, like,
I forgive you, I forgive you, do you forgive me, right?
Right, like, do I have to send out that message or I don't even do that, you know?
We do. We do.
If you wrong somebody and you don't know who it is.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
You could give them the money and they'll hold on to it until Mashiach.
Yeah, that sounds a little scammy. I would hold off on that, but there are other ways. Okay, give it to tzedakah personally. That's a beautiful idea. That's a beautiful idea. But okay, so here's really Here's the basic equation that gets us to a place of tshuva. Tshuva is choosing to connect to life, right? Tashuv hey, we go back to that place where we are a pure neshama that is connected to the source of life, the part of ourselves that is eternal, that is nitzchi, that is chelek elokam mima'al mamash. That's tshuva. We go back to that place. That place that has no hurts, that has no trauma, that place that understands that it's connected to something so much larger. To choose to go back to that place, we need to be free. We need to be free means we need to be present. Because if we're tied to our past, or if we're tied to a future that didn't yet happen through anxiety or worry, then we're actually not free. So to make a choice to choose life, to be present, to choose tshuva, we need to be free means we need to be present. And to be fully present, we need to tap in to a deep level of compassion. And I'm talking about a compassion for ourselves. The Alter Rebbe speaks about this in Tanya, that when we can understand that part of ourselves, and by the way, there's a very deep truth in this, that whenever we're really, really angry, it usually goes back to a place where we're angry with ourselves. When we're reacting in a way that's really hurt, like personally, we take it personally, someone else's behavior, if you dig deep, you will understand that there's a part of yourself that you are not forgiving, that you are angry with, and that is where it's coming from. To find a deep level of compassion, the Alter Rebbe speaks about the idea that there is a deep level of compassion that we have to have on our nefesh habahamis, on our inner child, on the part of ourselves that is scared, that is worried for our survival, that doesn't know exactly what this person is saying and if we're going to make it through this day and how we're going to make it, and worrying about hierarchies and worrying about where we stand, worrying about what another person thinks about us. All of this goes back to our internal, the place of our, you could call it the inner child that hasn't yet acquired das, hasn't acquired awareness. It's like a little child who's having a temper tantrum. And you can't really reason with them at that moment, but you can have compassion. You know, they've had a hard day. They've been triggered. They've been overstimulated. A lot is going on that they don't understand, that they're not able to make sense of in this moment. So we can have the compassion on the small child that is struggling. We need to find that deep compassion for that part of ourselves that struggles, that is broken, that does not see itself as chelek elokam mima'al mamash, that doesn't understand that we are perfect and whole and pure and connected at every single moment. The part of ourselves that's struggling for survival. We have to find deep, deep Rahmanas. And this really is the work of the woman very powerfully. So tshuva is a woman's work as well, very powerfully, because we know that the woman represents Malchus, which is presence. It's represented by, the rechem. The rechem, the womb, is like this idea of a holding space. It doesn't do anything. The rechem doesn't actually change the child in any way. It just creates a space to hold the child as big as the child will get. It will expand to make space for that life. Rechem is also Rachmanas. It's also this idea of compassion. Compassion is the ability to be present. I love this etymology of the word compassion. It's from the Latin, it's two words, com, which means to be present, and passion means suffering. So compassion really means the ability to be present in the struggle, to be present with the suffering, to be present in the pain, just to be present. requires very deep compassion, no judgment, no narrative, just the ability to be present with it. When we can access that deep, deep compassion for ourselves, we can find it for other people.
How does, I feel like there's always this Yetzer Hara of like, if I have compassion for this down or negative thing I did or a situation I was in, or which is kind of what we're saying here. To let go of it is to have compassion of it with it. Are we pacifying it? Are we giving it like a,
Are we saying that it's okay?
yeah, that's the,
No, we're understanding where it came from. Are we saying when a child rips something out of the wall and breaks it because they're in a bad mood and they can't regulate their emotions and they're not in a place of das yet and they don't have perspective and they create this, they do something wrong, and let's say they create damage. There's two things here. One aspect is we have to address the damage and we have to make sure that doesn't happen again, and we have to find the root. But the other thing is compassion and understanding, you know, he's deeply dysregulated right now and doesn't have the tools, and to understand that there's a part of ourselves that in certain moments is not able to access that. And more when we can come into that place of presence and compassion and judge, like it's not judge, it's just accept that there is this part of ourselves, that this inner child that struggles, the more we're actually able to live in the present and be the adult, right? Rather than thinking that we are that child, that we have no power, that we are stuck, that we are trapped in that. There is our self that is bigger and can see the child and have compassion on it. And say, listen, you did wrong. You did something wrong. You messed up. It doesn't mean you're evil or you're bad. It means at that moment, you were not in the proper place to make a proper choice. And how do we fix that so that that doesn't happen again? And Tshuva is really coming back to the place in ourselves that is always Zochreinu L'chaim, that always remembers life and that always remembers that we are connected to life. So it's very powerful, the ideas that we're dealing with. What time is it? Do we have a few more minutes? How are we doing with time? Ladies, we're good? We're good with a few more minutes? I want to address this idea. You know, first of all, as women, in one lifetime, we go through many, many, many different stages of life. Even in one day, we might be a whole different person by the time we go to sleep than we were in the morning. It's another whole thing. But we have many stages of life. We have a stage of life when we're single and we're growing ourselves internally. We have a stage of life when we're building a family, when we're a wife, and we're raising children. We have a stage of life when our children have left home and we're dealing with adult children, or we're actually back into a stage of not dealing in the moments with a child. In every stage of life, we still have to show up to these Yamim Tovim. And it looks different every year, depending on what stage of life we're in. But I think there's something that is something that everyone experiences at some point. And I think it's like, it's something I really wanted to address, because I think, you know, there's almost this like pressure. We get to Yom Kippur and we're supposed to feel something, right? We're sitting in shul and we've done all this stuff and now we're supposed to feel this. And sometimes we're really blessed and we do. Sometimes we really feel it very powerfully. Sometimes we're not feeling it. We did everything, and sometimes, you know, we did everything we were supposed to do, everything we were told to do to get ready, and still there's a blockage. There's like something in our heart. I don't want to use the word dead, but there's a blockage, and we're we're not feeling it. And sometimes it's because maybe if we're raising small children, you know, we spent the morning looking for this one's Shabbos shoe, and this one, we had to wake up to go to shul, and they didn't want to go to shul, and this one is, and then we're worrying about, you know, the cleaning lady didn't show up, and now who's going to prepare the meal, and here I am sitting in shul, and no one's cutting the salads, and if we're single, maybe we're in a lot of pain, and maybe like there's its own struggle with the Yom Tif where, you know, we're dealing with so much hurt and pain and struggle to feel what we're supposed to feel in this Yom Tif without the context of a family, without the context of being in a marriage. If Chas v'Shalom, someone doesn't have children yet and they're davening for children and they feel like they're not, sometimes it's physical pain. Sometimes our bodies are just not doing well and we're in pain or we're uncomfortable and it's blocking us from feeling. And how do we show up? What do we do in this situation? Because I think there's almost like a very naive expectation. I don't know if it's naive, maybe it's hopeful, it's optimistic, but this idea that by the time we get to shul and we did kaparas and we dressed in white and we went to the mikvah and we benched our children, or we got the blessing from our parent, and we did all these preparations, and we went through Elul, and we went through Rosh Hashanah, and now we come here, we're going to feel it. And sometimes we really just don't. And by the way, it's not just applying to this moment of tshuva and forgiveness and all these things that we're meant to feel, and the openness of our living life. Sometimes, you know, we want to give love, we want to give attention, and we want to give with the wholeness of our being, and sometimes we feel blocked. And we want to show up with fullness, but there's a blockage, and it's just saying Yiddish, gaitnish. It's not going, it's just not happening. I heard a mashal, which is actually like one of these like ancient, like medieval like parables that was not a Jewish one, and then, you know, the Chassidus Rebbeim, like they adapted it, they made it ours. But it's a great mashal, and I think it's really speaks to this idea that there's a king who built a new palace, and he wants to commission a magnificent piece of art, and he has this hallway, you know, these two walls going this way and that way, and he wants art that really is like something that's going to awaken him, and it's going to be incredible and inspired. And he's not sure which artist is going to be the right artist, so he commissions two different artists, and he gives one artist this wall, and he gives the other artist this wall, and he says, I'm leaving it to you, to your inspiration, your creativity, create something magnificent for me. So artist number one on this wall, he is tapped in. He's in the flow. Anyone's ever felt this when you're in the flow? Maybe you're davening, maybe you're listening to music, maybe you're just connected to your purpose in this world at this moment, and everything is just flowing through you. You're like at the most creative, you're at your most powerful. This artist is in the flow. He wakes up every morning inspired. He shows up and he's painting and painting. And this painting is really, it's just like shaping up to be a masterpiece. Second artist is having a very hard time. Maybe his ego is getting in the way. Maybe his fear that the king is not going to like it, that it's not going to be special, that he's not doing it right. Maybe he's not really an artist. Who said he's really an artist? Maybe he's faking it. Anyways, he wakes up every morning and he's trying, and he makes one draft and another draft, and it's just not going. He's not inspired. And the deadline for the unveiling of this art is getting closer and closer. The king is not going to see it until the day of the unveiling. And finally the day arrives. And the two walls are covered with a cloth, and the king walks in with the whole entourage, and everybody is waiting for this unveiling ceremony to see this magnificent art. And the first artist, the inspired artist, they pull down the sheet and there's a gasp of awe. Wow, he created a true masterpiece. And now it's the turn for the second artist. And they pull down the sheet of the wall. And again, there's a collective gasp of awe. Wow, what a masterpiece. Looking closer, the masterpieces were identical. Because what the second artist did, in fact, was he just built a mirror. Now, there's a lot of different endings to this in the medieval parable, you know. Sometimes it doesn't end well. Sometimes the king gives a treasure to the first one, and then to the second one he gives a mirror to reflect the treasure. But the Chassidus Rebbeim saw this actually as a beautiful mashal for sometimes for how we have to show up in life. That sometimes we can't tap in to that inspiration. Sometimes we don't know if we have it, but we know we want to have it. The Rebbe Rashab actually in his Maimarim used to use the phrase very often, which is Ke'ilu Mamish, which really actually is like, I don't know, what's that? It's not an oxymoron. What's the word where you,
No.
A word that doesn't, it makes no sense. Antonym is the opposite. It's basically, it's a word that it doesn't make, Ke'ilu means as if. Mamish means actually. Almost literally. As if literally. But this is really exactly the idea. And it's not the idea of fake it till you make it. Because it's not faking it. It's not even the idea of Hamaisa Hua Ikar, that the main thing is actually to just get out and do it, whether you're feeling it or not. Ke'ilu Mamish means showing up as if you are fully inspired. As if you are so enthusiastic. As if you are feeling the love in the deepest place in your heart right now. And coming and acting from that place. Showing up from that place. Not just doing it because, you know, listen, I understand even if I don't feel it, I still have to do it. Or I'll just do it. And then maybe eventually I'll feel it. You know, everyone's familiar with the Mitaych Shalalishma from Pirkei Avos, Mitaych Shalalishma Balishma. When you start with Leilishma, we do it Leilishma, you'll come to Lishma. You'll come to do it for its own sake. And usually that's how it's translated. Even if you start off doing something good, not for the right purpose, eventually you'll come, which is like fake it till you make it, right? It's like maybe you're not doing it, but it doesn't matter. Show up and eventually you'll feel it. Maybe not. Maybe you won't. Maybe there's a blockage that's very real and you can't access it right now. You just can't access that place of inspiration. You cannot access that place of love. You can't find that place in your heart right now. Mitaych shalalishma, balishma means, mitaych means within. Within leilishma, ba, there is lishma. And you know, Chassidus and Tanya, we speak about this idea. The Alter Rebbe talks about the idea that the light, the Ar Ein Sof, this incredible light, is present, and in the Maisa you don't feel it necessarily, right? You're doing an action, it just feels like a disconnected action. It's never disconnected from the light. It's never ever disconnected. It always comes from that place of the light. So when we can understand that if we care enough to show up Ke'ilu Mamish, if we care enough to bring everything, every ounce of our focus, of our love, of our whatever we can, even if we're not really feeling it deep down, but we can come Ke'ilu, it's actually Mamish. The very fact that we want to show up that way, and we care enough means that there is a place deep within ourselves that actually does love, that actually does feel, that is deeply connected. We're just not able to access it right now. But we show up as if we are able to access it. And knowing that mamash, it is there. It is there. And we keep going back and we keep doing it. And when we can be lucky enough to get into that space, we will understand the whole time it was there all along. It was there all along. And this is really a very powerful thing as when we come, and the avodah of Yom Kippur really is to try and shake us out of our complacency. We walk, sometimes we walk in like a, hayinu kachomim. We're like walking around we're sleepwalking. We think we have all day, we have years ahead of us. We have so much time. We have so much, we can do this tomorrow. We don't have that sense of urgency. And Yom Kippur is meant to tell us, stop everything. And all these different minhagim that we do are really practices that are meant to take us into that, like shock our system into coming face to face with mortality, with the fleeting nature of life, and reminding us, right here, right now, that's all there is. How do we want to show up? If this was chas v'shalom, your last 24 hours, your last 25 hours on this earth, what would be important to you right now? Would you worry that the love is not clear and you're not really feeling it, you're not deeply connected to it? No, you just show up. You would show up with everything and you would connect to it. And that's how we come to Yom Kippur. We come with that sense that we're standing in front of, we're standing right now. This is Yom Adin. This is the final moments, Ne'ilah. We're like shocking ourselves into this awareness of the fleeting nature of life. And we say it in the tefillas. We say this idea that we're ketzel over, that we're kehine kachomer, all these different tefillas that we say that it's so delicate life. Life is so precious. It's so unpredictable. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We only have right now. Do we want to hold on to that stuff? Do we want to be trapped in that old reality? Do we want to be? Is that going to be important if we knew that this was it? It's not. None of that would matter. We would just want to be ubacharta b'chaim. We would choose life. That's all we would choose in that moment. So when we say Zachrenu l'chaim, melechafetz b'chaim, we remember that the Eibishter is an Eibishter of life, who loves life and wants life and asks us to choose life for ourselves at every moment, to show up fully present, conscious, mindful, bringing the best of who we are to this moment with deep compassion for ourselves, for our children, for those around us, for the Eibishter who has to struggle with us in this galus. And really get rid of all the distractions, all the blockages, the survival mechanisms, the silliness, the pettiness, the things we're holding on to, they don't serve us. When you say kol nidre, really think that we're letting go of it because it doesn't matter anymore. We want to choose life. We want to choose life only right now. And it's available to us. We just said it in the Torah. Kikar v'lecha davar ma'od, another favorite pasuk of the Rebbe that he put in the 12 pasukim. Kikar v'lecha davar ma'od, b'ficha u'v'vavcha la'asaysay. That it's not just that we can do it, but it's carved to you. It's a part of who you are. And even if you're only doing it, know that it's a part of who you are. And it's always, always accessible. And it's always there for you to do it, to show up. Elul, mamish, showing up fully. And when we go through this process fully, and we come out of Yom Kippur in this state of deep presence and awareness, then we can enter into the ultimate simcha, Zman Simchasenu, which is Sukkot, which is really that joy that we have when we just show up with none of this stuff. We don't have nothing to do on Sukkot. We sit in the Sukkah and we say, we just want to be in your presence, Hashem. We're here. Here we are, Hineni. I show up fully. And there is no joy. We know, somebody who never experienced Simchas Beis HaSheva, that Simcha, never saw true Simcha. What was the Simcha? The Rebbe describes the Simcha of Nisuch HaMayim, the Simcha of bringing back the waters. Remember Rosh Hashanah, we threw the stuff in the water? We let go of it. When we really let go of it, then we can bring it back. Then we can integrate it, because all of that stuff, it did happen. The mistakes we made, the hurts, the way that other people hurt us, the way that we hurt ourselves or hurt other people, it all happened. But if we're fully present right now, and now is everything that matters, and we're in a state of deep compassion and forgiveness, then everything that brought us to this moment is perfect. It's everything that was needed. And that's the real Simcha. That's the Simcha of Nisuch HaMayim. And the Rebbe said these words from David HaMelech that we say in Tehillim, Ushafta mayim b'sasan mimayne hashua. You will draw water with joy from the mayanas, from the well springs of Yeshua, of Geula. And that will be our reality this year, that we will be able to really draw in the mayim, the waters of awareness, and it should be a real Yeshua and Geula on a deeply personal level for each one of us, and of course on a global, cosmic level, that this year we dance Simchas Torah with the Rebbe, Mashiach in Yerushalayim HaBenuya with the Beis HaMikdash. Amen. Gemar Chassidus Torah, everybody. Gut gebencht Jahr. Really, all your tefillas should be niskabel.
All his years that he had in Siberia are not counted the years that he had to live, and he had to live a long life.
Wow. Wow. That's actually such a beautiful story. I want to write that down. Thank you. That's very, very beautiful. And it's mamish perfect for this, because he chose life. And when you choose life, you're given life. When we remember life, the Eibusher remembers us for life. That is so, so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me
I
here.
want to give a special thank you to our sponsor for tonight.
Okay.
During the talk,
Yes.
we got a sponsor. So
Oh, wow. Look at that.
I want to say a big thank you to Rochie Greengrass, Lily Nishmas, Mindel, Bas, Shraga, Feivel. And thank you so much.
Yeah.
A lot of love, a lot
Thank
of
you.
support.
Thank you for the support.
Um,
This is a very special thing you're doing here, and Eibusher should give you koyach to keep going. And not just keep going, but Machayel Al-Chayel, it should grow and increase, and it should be the...
Amen.
which is a little
And the
sneak
Makam, yes.
preview for everybody. We're gonna send out a save the date, but as Hashem, we're working on a place very seriously, and we'll be sharing more news about that in the coming weeks.
There you go.
As Hashem.
There you go. Big brachas in the coming year. Expansion,
Thank
expansion,
you.
expansion.
And
Amazing.
now is a good time. Please daven for all of us.
Yes.
because This
Gashmias
place
is
our,
Ruchnius.
yes, and it is it's for our gifts, and it's each and every one of us. So, thank you so much. In the meantime, do you mind if we take our
Oh, the picture?
yes.
Absolutely. How could we not take the picture?